You know, Donald Trump says that he is going to do so much and do so well for the African American community. I mean, he indicates that it's just going to be unbelievable how well the African American community is going to do if they give him their votes and he's elected president. Well, he gave a speech a couple of days ago in North Carolina. And I'm going to play excerpts of that speech for you. And then I have a question.
At the end of 4 years, I guarantee you that I will get over 95% of the African American vote. I promise you. Because I will produce for the inner cities, and I will produce for the African Americans.
For 2 nights in a row, Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's going to produce. Now, this segment has to do with him not bringing up the fact that North Carolina is doing everything within its power and even outside of its power to restrict the African American votes that Donald Trump is seeking. Dr. William Barber is going to be the guest in this section of the AM Joy Show, and he's basically going to outline what's going on.
Has made a direct appeal to African American voters in Michigan last night and on Thursday in North Carolina, though he did so in 2 towns with almost no black people. Meanwhile, Trump's political party in North Carolina seems intent on blocking African American access to the ballot. Last month, the federal appeals court struck down parts of the state's restricted 2013 voting law, ruling that it discriminated against voters of color and targeted African Americans in particular with almost surgical precision. But that isn't deterring local GOP leaders. A memo by Dallas Woodhouse, the executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party, urges GOP appointees of county election boards to make party line changes to early voting by limiting hours and keeping polling places closed on Sundays, which, as we know, is a popular day to vote among black early voters. And joining me now from Raleigh is Reverend William Barber, president of Repairs of the Breach and a leader of the Moral Mondays movement. And Reverend Barber, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. And tell me about this letter. So Dallas Woodhouse, who people may have heard of his brother Brad, who's a Democratic strategist, who actually rebuked him pretty thoroughly on Twitter and called what he asked the county board to do racist and completely disgusting, and said he should be ashamed of himself. Tell me the origin of that Dallas Woodhouse email.
You know, it's just hard to talk about this stuff, Joe. When you think about we are 21st century, his own brother called him a racist. That's like Cain versus Abel. You know, we had the courts unanimously twice in 2 weeks catch McCrory and our legislators red-handed. Said they were intentionally racist in this monster voter suppression bill and intentionally racist in the way they did redistricting and created apartheid redistricting. So what does McCrory do? Instead of saying, okay, he doubles down. He files a case with the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court basically to join him in the promotion of racism. And now we understand, Georgia, they're paying about $1,000 an hour for the lawyer that they've hired out of D.C., according to one of my attorneys. And we now know that they've spent over $5 million of North Carolina's taxpayers' dollars to try to take away the vote. And then this memo comes out, a secret memo, where Dallas Woodhouse actually says to local boards of election, who are, you know, have 2 Republicans on them, do not do what the courts say. We want you to make the laws about voting and the decision about voting based on what the Republicans say.
And basically,
that's exactly what he said.
And saying that, you know, do it in the interest of the party. So he doesn't explicitly say that it's racial, but it's self-preservation. If you look at the polling, Reverend Barber, you see that Hillary Clinton is actually doing quite well in North Carolina, which may be alarming the Republican Party. But Governor McCrory is actually losing in his re-election bid, if you look at the polling. This is about direct self-preservation of the Republicans. What is it that they think might be the origin of a voter backlash against the statewide Republican leaders that would make them so afraid of black voters?
Yeah, well, right, and we do think it is racist because the court said that anytime you use politics, that's what they said in that case. Anytime you cannot make a political decision, you know it has surgical precision to impact African Americans, and then say it's just political. But they are afraid. They know that this Republican legislature and governor have been totally regressive. They are wrong on living wages, even though about 79% of people in North Carolina want living wages. They are wrong on stopping Affordable Care Act for 500,000 people. They've been wrong on public education, wrong on immigrant rights, wrong on the LGBT community. They have just been so regressive and hurt so many people that in North Carolina, Republicans, Democrats, and alike are just sick, really, in many ways, of this kind of leadership. And they know that if the African American community votes at the levels it voted, for instance, in 2008 and 12 at 70%, and you join that with progressive whites and other people, Latinos, they know they cannot win in the public square with a vote. So what they're doing is fraud, which is no fraud, and they're doing everything they can to stifle the vote.
Have you ever seen this blatant an attack on African American voters, at least in the modern era in your state?
No, and historians and the courts have said that this is some of the worst attacks on voting rights since Jim Crow. It all began after Shelby. Now remember, these are the same people that the governor and the legislator, one of the legislators said the day that Shelby was passed, now that the headache has been removed. So they signaled exactly what they would do. And what's interesting, Joy, is you have Trump and coming into this state. And, you know, he visited North Carolina a lot before he ran for president. He brought his birtherism and all that in North Carolina. He comes to North Carolina and says for black people to trust him, and he doesn't say a thing against voting rights. You know, he suggests that his party is the party that's going to help and that black people are naive. Now, you know, that's inherently racist. In other words, your party has been against voting rights since the 60s. You've been against the Civil Rights Act. You fought us on public education. You fought us on immigrant rights. You fought us on social safety nets. You fought us on living wages. You took us into the worst recession that we've seen since the Great Depression. You engaged in trickle-down economics that did not help the working poor. You even, under your watch, we had 9/11. But somehow black people are naive because we don't trust your leadership.
Yeah, and now to add to that, they are making a direct attempt to stop people from getting to the polls. It's pretty remarkable, but we're glad that you're there. Reverend William Barber, thank you so much, and we'll definitely have you back on as this continues to progress. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there you go, North Carolina. And the sad part about it is, with all the crap that they're attempting to do in North Carolina, Clinton is still going to win North Carolina, and McCrory is going to get voted out of office, along with quite a few other North Carolina Republican state office holders. Times are changing.